Welcome everybody to the Art of a Peaceful Mind. I'm Kim Root, your host, and today we have with us Lisa Gunshore, who's an author and a psychic and a shaman and a holistic healing practitioner. So let's invite her. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's really a blessing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're so excited to have you here. So you come from about 4 generations of healers, psychic healers, from what I know. Is that right?
Yes, it is. I am 4th generation that we know of. I imagine it probably goes back farther than that. But all the women in my family have had some kind of psychic, medium, or trance channel gift that's really been handed down in some way, whether it was teaching it or, just genetics, I guess.
So when did you discover what your gift was, or was it developing over time?
Yeah, it was definitely, I knew that myself and my mom especially weren't normal, because we saw and felt things that not everybody talked about. So we kind of kept that to ourselves growing up. So when I was a kid, I definitely saw a lot of figures, especially at night. I had a man in overalls that looked like he worked on a railroad somewhere stand at my bedroom door every night, I think for like 4 or 5 years as a child, before he sort of disappeared. And so I would see a lot of beings around me, and I knew that they were people that had passed away. But I wasn't really sure to do with it. When you're a little kid, I'd just run and hide under the covers. It was like, I don't know who you are. I don't know what to do with you. But as I grew into my preteen and teenage years, I became very fascinated with the occult. I read all sorts of history books about witchcraft. I wanted to learn about religion. I was raised Irish Catholic. I come from an Irish family. And even in the Catholic Church, I had a lot of interest, even in the priesthood. I was very interested in spirituality, religion, and the occult. And that just kind of blossomed over time. And it wasn't until I was an adult and I actually lost a baby and was really grief stricken. And that was the first time I really reached out with my gifts and asked the universe, what do I do? What am I supposed to do with my life? What am I supposed to do with all of this? And my mom read tarot cards, so I knew how to read them and had read them for myself and friends, since I was probably 15 years old. And I just really got this strong message to go get my cards and see what they had to say. And I dug them out of a box. I don't even think I'd touched them for 10 years at this time. This was back in 2006. And I pulled out my cards and really threw them and looked at them, and I felt like it was time to start helping people. And so I really came out of the closet, so to speak, about my gifts and started working with people. And here it is 12 years later. And, I think it's interesting. You try to help people, but really it's us craving our own healing. And so over the past decade, while I've been working with clients all around the world, I've also lost 100 pounds and been through my own self-inquiry practice. Yeah, it's crazy. And that's really energy and purification. It wasn't really a set diet. It was really going through trials and tribulations and trying to understand my own self, so that I could help other people. So that's really kind of how my gifts, they definitely developed, and they're still developing. I don't think they ever stop developing. I think we continue to evolve and change. And, I have really strong clairvoyance, but my clairaudience is opening up over the past year with work I've been doing. So it's interesting because it changes over time, I think.
What's a clairaudience?
So clairaudience, just like there's 5 senses, there's 5 psychic senses. So clairaudience is hearing, clairgustance is smelling, clairvoyance is seeing, claircognizance is knowing. And a lot of people operate just from clairsentience, which is feeling and being empathic and connecting with people. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you're also a holistic healer, and you work a lot with people with mold sensitivities and toxic sensitivities. Is that connected to your psychic work somehow, or do you feel like you studied that separately? Are they separate things, or do you see them together?
They are definitely all one. And I've been through multiple layers. It started with parasites and then went to candida and then went to mold. It was like these different layers of toxicity, and each one of them teaches us, about ourselves. And so, and each one took me through a purification process based on what was going on in my life. So they're very much connected. The parasites, when you think of the metaphysical reason behind them, I mean, it's an energy feeding off of you. And I had to step back and really look at my life and say, who and what am I allowing to feed off of me? And go through that self-inquiry practice. What was that showing me? How is that serving me? And it really opened up a space for me to look at my own codependency, to look at what I'd created in my life that was toxic. And since then, each layer is another piece of that. The mold is really challenging for a lot of people in the world right now. It's actually a really big problem, and a lot of people are very sensitive. But mold, from a metaphysical standpoint, is something growing from the past. It's something that's been stirring and stewing from the past. And so it really forces you to look at, what you haven't been willing to look at before. And so my work with anyone is really taking a look at a couple different things. I mean, part of it is medical, intuitive work, really looking at what's coming up, because a lot of people that come to me don't know why they're having the symptoms they're having. So the psychic piece is really looking at what those are all about. But the shamanic piece and the soul journey piece is discovering what that is teaching you, so that you can release it. And what I've come to learn, and it's so hard to articulate, so I hope I can do a good job of it. But in doing the inner work, in looking at how it's serving you, the outside, the physical work just happens. It's amazing. In doing the self-inquiry practice, I've experienced myself, and I've seen my clients where test results show up before they were supposed to. Doctors they didn't know existed showed up. Practitioners come into their life. It's like all the physical pieces also connect as you work on the spiritual part. So it's really all one. It's not at all separate. It's all one. And the only way to keep it from perpetuating itself is by doing the work. So I've myself have had to look at, when it's come up again, I had 2 near-death experiences with mold. And the second one, I had to step back and say, what did I not see the first time? What do I still need to work on, that this is still, appearing in my life? So.
Wow. So you're really helping people discover themselves and going toward maybe enlightenment or self-discovery as part of the healing.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is about, and even my shamanic practice, for a long time, I did a lot of just past life work, and anymore, it's about this life. It's about the present time. It's about, what is influencing your decisions now, what's influencing your health now, and not being afraid of it. I mean, I think it's shadow work, and we're afraid to look at that. But when you look at it and you embrace it, so much clears from your field. I've seen so many beautiful things happen with my clients, and like I said, with myself as well. So I think that's one thing my clients know about me, and is that I'm still doing the work too. So I'm definitely human, and we all have to keep, taking steps to heal.
Right. That makes the best healer. I really believe that you're going through it or have been through it, so you understand. There's empathy there. So
yes, for sure. And there
yeah.
is, with health issues, there is definitely a PTSD that you experience if you've had any kind of traumatic health issue or a loss. And so the meditation practices and self-inquiry practices can help ground you through those traumatic times too.
So is there a particular sharing that something you can share about how you've helped somebody, any particular kind of sharing about Mm. What somebody has gone through that has worked with you?
Wow. Yeah, I can. Let me think about what story I want to share. I think I've been to more weddings and baby showers than I can count of people that have come to me and, been alone and wanted help with that. And I do remember one particular young guy in particular, and he's young guy, very not stereotypical of someone who would go to a psychic. And he came to see me every once in a while, and he was always so great. He'd have his journal and he'd write notes and kept track of things. And I remember him coming and talking to me about being frustrated that he was alone and he wanted to have a partner. And so I gave him some self-inquiry practices to work on about, how it was serving him to be alone and what he needed to get from that. And we also talked about how to open up his energy, to having somebody in his life. And he did meet somebody just a few months later. He did his work. He was very diligent. And they not only got married, but I've worked with his wife as well. And she was having issues, having a baby, and gave her some work to do around that, and did a lot of work with the sacred feminine energy. And they are probably having their baby any day now, and are very happy and have been together several years now. And that's just one of many. But that's one that sticks out because both of them are so willing to do the work that you need to do to heal. And they're living proof that you can have the life that you want.
Mm. Let's see. I know I have more questions, but so do you believe as you take people through these processes, do they, I'm a yoga teacher, and I see sometimes that people come to me with issues that they think are a problem,
Mm-hmm.
but it sounds like you keep turning what people come to you with what they see as a problem, and it seems like from what you're saying, you turn it into something to look at that is a positive, or something to go into, that thing itself is the healing process, rather than, because so many times people come with something that they want to get away from. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense to you?
It does. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Or they're frustrated with, or they feel like they don't want what is happening in their life. And
Right.
yeah, I typically put it back on them in a nice way, in a compassionate way. But letting them know, that there's a reason for it. There's a lesson in it. And that it's actually doing something very positive for them, versus something that feels very negative is actually something that's a really valuable lesson for them. And so we go through a process. I always give the same example to my clients when I give them homework is, when we ask ourselves if we're angry, like I'm an Irish gal, got a temper, when I'm angry, I have to ask myself, well, how is my anger serving me? And the egoic mind is going to say, it's not serving me. I shouldn't be angry. It's bad to be angry. But if you can push past the ego, you learn what I learned about anger specifically is anger was providing a boundary for me that I couldn't provide for myself. So whenever I get angry or frustrated, I have to stop and say, where have I overcommitted? Where have I not had functional boundaries? Where have I allowed people to overstep or a situation to overstep? And I always give that example because I think it's such a great one, because the process of really asking those questions, if there's a situation you don't like, there's something underneath that. There's something that's supporting you. Another great example is relationships. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with that have issues with relationships. Most people wanting one and being single or being in an unhappy relationship. And oftentimes being alone or being in toxic relationships is actually something we're we're subconsciously creating because we're protecting ourselves, because we don't want intimacy. We don't want to connect. We're afraid to be vulnerable. So it's easier to either not be in a relationship or to continue to perpetuate a cycle of toxic relationships so that we're not having that kind of connection. And so it's really looking at, well, what happened? And that's where the shamanic journey piece comes in, because I would say more times than not, especially indigo children, empathic, sensitive people have had some form of abuse in their life, even if it's subtle. And so being able to journey back to that time and space and be able to protect yourself for the first time, instead of being the victim, can release that energy and really complete a soul retrieval, retrieving a soul fragment. And that work is very powerful, because as soon as they do that, they can let go of that energy and operate from present time, rather than being stuck. So I think, what I try to help people with is learning how to understand what's happening to them, and that they really create their own life. We create our own lives. No one else does that for us. Even the things that we're unhappy with, we created for some reason. And so we really have to step back and look at why we're doing that. And it's usually a positive reason. It's not that, we're masochistic. We're usually doing it because there's something that we need from that we're not able to do ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing that's hard to see when you're the one going through it, because it just feels like a bad thing that you're going through, or a negative thing that you're going through. So,
It's true.
Is there a particular issue that people come to you with normally, or all kinds of different people?
All
It
kinds
sounds
of.
like you talk a lot about relationships and things.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think the theme is pretty consistent. It's either relationships or health, or grief, dealing with somebody that they've lost that they want to connect with, because I'm a medium as well. But I would say those are probably the top three. I think I get a lot more people now because of my journey with my health and my ability to overcome so many autoimmune issues within my own body. I do have a lot more people come to me with health issues that really want to understand, because there's so much impacting us in the world, that I would say the majority of the clients I work with now are coming to me wanting to know how to deal with it, whether it's a toxic relationship, toxicity in their physical body, whether it's a work issue that's toxic, or whether it's just that they're sensitive and psychic and empathic as well, because I think we all are, and they don't know how to handle all this energy bombarding us. So a lot of what I do is working with people to sort that out. What is impacting them? How do you get in the present moment? How do you clear out that toxic energy from your life?
Right, right. So, and is there a general way that people do that, or in like, is it very similar for everybody, or does it seem like it's different in the way you see it?
My process is the same with every person, and it's what I have in my book as well. It's about awareness, becoming aware through mindfulness practice and self-inquiry, becoming wise through research, whether it's researching how to manage, codependency or dealing with toxic relationships, or whether you're researching your own health, gathering data, and then practice, which is the third step, which is really about doing the practices, whether it's sitting down for 5 minutes to meditate, or sitting down to do some journaling, but putting that into play. And then there's a whole piece that's about trust. We have to trust, and that's probably the biggest one. So that's my process, no matter what the issue is really, how do we get present? How do we become present so we can see truth and your authenticity? And then, from there, how do we work through that? What comes up in those moments is the next step in the process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one of the questions I was going to ask you was whether you believed that everybody had those abilities, which I believe too. It's just a matter of uncovering it and how close we are to that, or how far away we feel from it, and being able to open up to it. And I was also going to ask you about trust. So, because that seems like a huge thing, trusting others, but the biggest part is trusting ourselves, right? Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I do believe that everyone is psychic. I believe it's a muscle, just like, our muscles, and you can work it and develop it. And I think there are things that we might be stronger in than others. So somebody might be more clairvoyant while someone might be more empathic, because of your natural inclinations. But I think it's all something you can develop. And I think, obviously, meditation, contemplation, those practices can continue to open you up as well. So I definitely believe in that. And yeah, trust is huge, and something I still struggle with every day is trusting my own abilities, trusting my own self-worth, trusting my own gifts. We all question ourselves. And so, we have to find a way to trust. And, that's all about our connection in our crown chakra, and really even our 8th chakra in the luminous light body is really, our connection to God, which manages trust. And most people have blocks in those energy centers. Most people are conflicted when it comes to God, unity consciousness, and that influences our ability to trust in the divine. And I can say that the moment that I knew I may not live to see another day, I was laying in my bed. Was having a thyroid storm from the mold exposure, and I really knew, like, I may not make it through that. And it was the first time in my life, and this was 2 years ago, I thought to myself, I could feel the clinging, like the holding. And I thought to myself, I can't be afraid of this. And it's crazy that I would be. I'm like, I talk to people who've crossed over every day, and yet here I am, like, panic stricken. I'm going to pass away in the middle of the night. And I thought, I have to face this. And so I laid in my bed, and I really let go. And I thought, what happens if I leave? And this overwhelming peace came over me. And I thought, wow, like, I've had a really good life. Like, I've done a lot of things. I've had love and travel and experiences, and I've, worked with people and all these things. And, that wave of energy passed, and the next wave of energy that came over me was, what if I live? What if I make it through this? And, the energy of that was the trust. I feel it was like, if you make it through this, you can make it through anything. And it's having that faith. And I don't even know if it's blind faith, but I think it's having that faith, that you're going to make the right choices and go in the right direction. Even if it ends up feeling like you don't like how it worked out, it's still exactly where you were supposed to be.
Yeah, that's great. Would you share the name of your book?
Yes, I will. So my book is Enlightenment Pie, Enlightenment Pie, PIE, exactly as it sounds. And it started kind of as a family joke, about having enlightenment pie. I had done some volunteer work with His Holiness the Dalai Lama in Washington, D.C., and I had just gotten back, and we had this whole, like, banter with my niece and nephew about enlightenment and enlightenment pie. And that's how it started, almost like 11 years ago. And over time, I started writing about my journey, and it became so intertwined with my relationship with food, with toxic relationships, with food addiction. And it suddenly had such a different meaning for me. So Enlightenment Pie today means for me that, we have all of these pieces and fragments of our life that are intertwined with each other, and they all work together. What we choose to put in our body when we eat dinner is a direct reflection of our spiritual practice, of the relationships that we choose. The life that we build around us is the same thing as the life we build inside of us, with the air we breathe and the food we eat. So it's really morphed into something pretty special, I think.
So, yeah, I really appreciate the work that you're doing. I
Oh,
think it's
thank you so much.
I think it's it's connected to us and the people we work with, but it's also because we're all connected, it's really connected to the whole earth and to all of humanity and the health of everything. So because our consciousness in the way that I see it anyway is all connected. So uh,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, that's
Absolutely. And as we evolve our consciousness, how we live in the world will evolve as well. And that's what we have to hope for too, that
right.
we clear out some of the toxic energy that's in our world right now. So,
Yeah, that's our responsibility, really.
hmm
Yeah.
yes, absolutely.
So we just have about 2 minutes left. So um, your website is in Enlightenment Pie also, right? For those
Yes, my
that are-
website's enlightenmentpie.org,
Uh-huh.
and all of my information is on there, in my event calendar as well. I do local events, and I travel as well for events and speaking and mediumship and communicating with people who've passed away. And I work with clients everywhere, so Skype and phone are probably more of my work than in person because I have so many people spread out everywhere.
Right.
And I have two different, sessions that people can do. They can either, work with me as a psychic medium, or they can work with me as a health consultant. So there's really options, depending on what people want to do. So
That's great. And then you have a free gift for people, right?
I do. So everyone who's listening and watching will be able to receive a free copy of my ebook. And there will be a code that will be available to them shortly for that. So they'll be able to just order it through Hay House and put in their code, and they'll have a free ebook.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So it's been great talking to you,
Thank
Lisa,
you.
and
Thank you so
um,
much.
I look forward to talking again.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.